over the last couple of years, Denise and I have been doing quite a bit of work just around, our own effectiveness. I think we all, we've only got these 24 hours in a day, and we sleep for probably between 6 and 8 of them, and then we work for between 8 and 10 of them, and then we've got a little bit of time left to live our lives, haven't we? And so we're always looking at, different ways of just trying to get more out of the time that we've got. And so I just want to take you a whistle-stop tour and share some ideas, okay? Because I know we've talked about productivity at the last couple of events, with different kind of like perspectives, really. And the reality is we've probably all come across different productivity systems that, are sold to us. We see presentations on them, we buy books on them. We might even go on a course. I remember years ago at Pfizer going on a time management course for several days. I'm not going to get those days back. I'm not going to get those days back. And it was around a computer program as well. And it was like, and thou shalt do it this way. And it's like, well, bits worked, but some of it didn't work for me. And you look at somebody else's system and bits work, but it doesn't all work. So this session really is about sharing bits from here, there, and everywhere of ideas around productivity, or ideas around what kind of like gets in the way for all of us, so that you can make it, build any of these ideas, pick and choose from them, and build them into what works for you. Okay? So time management, what is it? I've seen so many definitions of this. And I think, I really like this one. It's not about using somebody's particular system. It's about how we as individuals, how we use time effectively. And we're all going to do that in different ways because we're all super unique individuals with our own blend of talents and everything. But the reality is we've all got the same amount of time. And so it's how we make the most of the hours that we choose to work, because that's a choice as well. Some of us might have firmer boundaries around work and other parts of our life. And I know from lots of conversations that many of us, there aren't a lot of boundaries. It's kind of like very fluid, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong. So, what does someone who's good at managing their particular own time, what does that look like? Well, it's people who consciously plan in the time that they've got, okay? They make their decisions about what they're going to do in that time based on their goals and what's important to them. And that will connect with, what their why is as well, in terms of what Dawn was saying earlier. This is an interesting one. Thinking back about, awareness and self-regulation I was chatting about before lunch. It's also about people who recognise when they're getting distracted and can refocus. And I'm a lot better at realising that I've spent too long looking at BBC Sport when I don't want to do something that I'm meant to be doing. So I'm making progress. Now, it's also someone who knows their priorities, okay? And they know that if they're being asked to do something that doesn't fit with their values, their goals, and their why, it's a lot easier to say no. It's all right. Okay, and sometimes it's about getting really good about saying no and not taking on other stuff if it doesn't fit. So there are 4 keys then to managing our time. However you manage it, there's kind of like 4 key things. 1, decide ahead of time how you want to use the time that day rather than reacting. It doesn't matter how many hours you're working, you make that decision. And a number of us have talked about, particularly just thinking back to Cheryl's session yesterday, about rather than just diving in and doing the doing of writing the job ad, is just taking that bit of time to step back and to plan the doing of that job ad, yeah? So it's deciding ahead of time. Then decide how long you're actually going to spend on whatever the task is. Because if you're going to rewrite a job ad, how long are you going to spend reviewing and planning? How long are you going to spend on the doing? Okay? Because the reality is that if we don't decide how long and put that block of time in our calendars, then that, well, it'll only take me 10 or 15 minutes, becomes 30, 35, 40 minutes. And, and that depends on the task. So let's make a decision and let's plan that. The other thing is thinking, and of course this depends on the task as well, but let's say if you are going to allocate some time to planning, for example, how long are you going to allocate? And in that amount of time you put aside, what might come up? What are some of the obstacles? What might get in the way? And so that actually you can plan for that as well. Because what happens is if we don't anticipate that, we hit that hurdle, and then it's like, well, we just crack on and do whatever we need to do. But of course, that time that you blocked off suddenly can easily double or triple. So if we anticipate the hurdles, that will help us decide on how much time. And establishing routines for how we work and live. And this will be incredibly individual. And so this is about, how do you decide what is your daily routine, and having a routine that works for you, rather than reacting to whatever comes up in that day. And so there's no routine really, either to the personal side of your daily life or the business side. And I guess, this is kind of like where I know in the early days of kind of like, well, in the later days of COVID, let's say, people may well have, got out of bed, gone to the gym on their way to work, gone for a swim, picked up some breakfast on the way, got into the office for 8:45, whatever, and they'd had their routine. But then suddenly we're all working from home in COVID, and it's so easy to stay in your PJs, get out of bed, walk across into the bedroom where your desk might be, or it might be in the corner of your bedroom. You go there, you sit there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it could be lunchtime. That's a very different routine. So establish for yourself what your personal routine. So how are you going to plan time then? Here's a few things. Just building on what I've just said there, actually. Decide how long do you want to allocate to opening your day and closing it. And so by that, what I mean is, let's say from the point when you get up, what is it that you want to do is your personal routine before you start work? That's different. I know there's a super lovely lady in the room here who gets up incredibly early, sort of 5:30 most days, I would say, works out every single day, then she walks the dog, then she's got other things to do, food prep, and then she'll start a day. Okay, that's going to be very different for some people. Mike goes for a swim most days. Yeah, so we've all got now. There are some days when I will, do things before work, but there's other days when I literally will get up, shower, and I'm straight in the office, and it's very early. Okay, and I'll tell myself, well, that's okay, because I'll finish about 5:30, and I will go for a walk, or I will go to the gym, and then something kind of like will happen later in the day, and it's, well, I just want to do this, and I just want to do that, and it's 6:45, and it's like, Denise will say, we should be getting some dinner, and I know that's not healthy, but I kind of like that's something I need to work on. Is kind of like actually making me important in my daily routine, not kind of like then at the end of the day reacting, because that's what happens. I start off really well, but I react later in the day. So I'm being really honest here, because there's things that we all can work on, and I am not perfect at all. So have some opening day and closing day routines. So that it's the latter that probably is my work in progress, let's say, so that you can shut off. So you can separate work and family time, yeah, because we've all got lives. So anyway, who's got, out of interest, who's got a really good, consistent morning routine? I know the lovely Rachel has. Yes, and Cheryl, yeah. Karen, you have, yeah. Alex, yeah, Sharm.
Yeah, I was going to say, kids, you haven't got to do that for you.
Yes, well, no, absolutely. They do help you kind of have that regular routine. Who has a conscious, organised closing routine to their day? No. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think when this was something that when we came across this, I thought, well, I've worked on different ways of having my morning routine, but I've never really had a closing day routine. And that's when I realised how reactive that closing day routine is. But it's really good food for thought, isn't it? About, okay, so how do I want to end my day? Yeah?
Not involving something white and cold.
No,
White.
that's how you want to end the
Oh, white and cold.
day. So in COVID, you knew your day was ended when you got your first drink out the fridge.
When you got the first drink out the fridge.
You knew your day had ended then in COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, what's she talking about? White and cold, yes. Yeah. 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 So it sounds like we've all got a little bit of progress we could make on our closing day routines then, yeah. Whatever that might be. So to kind of like just dip a little bit back into what we were talking about before lunch. You know, the bottom line is it's about, you know, us teaching our brain to not be in the same place, but to actually, you know, have some dividing space between the different parts of our lives. Even for those of us who've got blurred lines, you know, because work isn't work to me. I don't define it kind of like as work. It's part of my life. It's what I do, and it's part of me. Yeah, and I don't have guilt anymore. If someone wants to criticise me, then that's their stuff. Their opinion about my brother has very strong opinions. I love him, and he has very strong opinions, and he offers those opinions even when they're not so. And he has very strong opinions very frequently about the hours that we put in. Yeah? And it used to really wind me up. But do you know what? It's just like, he's got an opinion, and that's fine. And I don't worry about it, and I don't, you know, get stressed about it or anything. He's going to have it, but I can't control that. Yeah? Work's always been a job to him, and that's fine. I respect that, you know, but yeah. So anyway, no more guilt tripping at work and worrying about falling behind when you're not working, because we all need that kind of like break and stuff, don't we? So what do you do then? So a suggestion here is, it reminds me of something I said yesterday actually, that the brain is a processor. It is not meant to be an archive. Yeah? So rather than carrying lots of stuff around in our heads about what we need to do, just get it all out of our head and get it down onto a list. Call it a master list, whatever you want to call it. Stick it in your iPad, pop it down in a notebook, whatever you have. But, you know, master list all the tasks that you know you need to do in a week, personally and business-wise. Okay, because if we get some of our personal stuff out there as well, at least it stands some chance of getting into the calendar to get done, right? So write everything down, because it actually kind of like, I don't know, but when I write it down, it really kind of like feels like I'm offloading. Yeah, and it kind of frees up the brain. So basically we can sleep, the brain can then process what is on that list. So the next day we can kind of like start getting focused on it. It calls it brains are not containers, because they're not, they're processors. So if you, I don't know about you, but as I go through the week, I can start off, at the beginning of the week with my equivalent of that, my kind of like brain dump, as I call it. But as I go through the week, I'm picking up tasks. So it's like, well, what do I do with those? Because I plan my week out on achieving this, but then other stuff's coming in. Who else has got that experience? It happens all the time, doesn't it? And so it's kind of like thinking, right, well, so have I got capacity in my calendar to bring all the stuff in, or does that have to get scheduled to the following week, or do I need to kind of look at reprioritizing? Yeah. So I keep a running list of the other things that are accumulating, and I come on to what can happen then. So when you've got that list, going back to what I was saying earlier about deciding, look, are these kind of like admin tasks? Is this kind of like part of a project? Do I need to do a bit of research in order to kind of like evolve how I write some of my job ads? Do I need to do a little bit of kind of like learning and practice with my Boolean searches? So allow yourself an appropriate amount of time to do what you need to do. Now here's something, if you haven't come across this concept of Parkinson's law before, this is the idea that if you give yourself 30 minutes to do a job, a task, you can train your brain to do that task in 30 minutes. If you give yourself an hour, you'll take an hour. Because in between time, you'll probably get up, go and make a coffee. You might do a little bit of surfing to check, a bit of the prep that you've already done, that you've already surfed on, and then you actually get down and knuckle down and do the task. Whereas if you just allowed yourself 30 minutes, it's like, right, okay. Who's one of those people who you leave something right to the last minute because then the pressure's on and you really need to get it done because you've got a deadline? No, I can see the real kind of like process organisers know there, but there are some fellow people here, yeah. And that's kind of like what happens is that we know the pressure's on. We've got a finite amount of time, so we focus more. Now, if we could use that skill without putting the pressure of the deadline on and use that way of working regularly, how much more effective might we be? So, food for thought here. So you've got your master list, personal, business. You've decided how long all these individual things are going to take. And here's the thing, when it comes to Parkinson's law, you might say, well, look, I'm going to give myself 45 minutes because I know it takes me a little bit longer to do that particular task. You might run over and not complete it. And in the early days, that's fine, because if you are really focused on condensing the amount of time you give yourself to do things, it will take a bit of practice to get into a different way of working, rather than either not setting yourself a time frame, but just kind of like, going free fall, and you will consume more time then. So once you've decided on your timings, schedule it. Schedule it into your calendar. So rather than having like a to-do list that you tick off, who loves ticking? Who loves ticking? Yeah. It's like, it's like a little gold star from school when I can tick something off. Yeah. But schedule it in your calendar instead. Okay, so you've got those blocks of time there. Now, the thing though is, it's like, well, okay, if I've got a list of 20 things, do I kind of like, I give them, a amount of time, but how do I then kind of like plan them into my calendar? Because some people will probably give things on their list the same amount of priority. It's like, well, this is the to-do list. This is kind of like, I'm just going to work my way down the list versus prioritizing. Yeah, so we'll kind of look at, I'll share something about it in a second. So let's say in terms of doing some suggestions around priorities here, this is kind of like my big working process is schedule you first. Okay, so whatever that might be for you, you know, your gym sessions, any hobbies that you have, you know, if it's kind of like, I don't know, sort of anything pamper-wise, just put you first and get your stuff in the calendar, including family things that you're doing, things with kids, just get that in. You know, obligations, that could be, you know, anything, again, social calendar-wise. And then, when it comes to our business priorities, think about your money-making activities first. Yeah? Now, sometimes, on a Monday morning, just to kind of get myself going, you know, I've kind of had that habit of doing some of the easy things. And that falls into kind of like admin-y stuff. Yeah? Whereas, who else does that out of interest? You know, just get yourself going, whatever day it is, just to get yourself going. Who goes for the easy stuff at times? Yeah. It is, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Or that's what we tell ourselves, isn't it? We'll just catch up, yeah. Now, who can like say, well, I'll just take 30 minutes and I'll get myself into the groove and then I'll have a go at like, you know, that more meaty task I really need to get going on, and finds it's 10:30 before you know. And that 30 minutes has just expanded. Anybody have that experience? Absolutely. Yes, and I'm there with you as well. So here's a suggestion then, and certainly, you know, with BD in mind, you know, talking from this morning, right? What's a bigger priority? Sending out a few emails that are more admin-y emails. They're not about BD or anything, right? They're more admin-y emails, or focusing on those BD activities. And if that, James, is about starting to get, you know, the email sequence together for a cold campaign, making a decision on what software I'm going to use, and actually focus on money-making activities first. Yeah? And then we can kind of like get on to the admin tasks. But at least we know we have done things for our business every single day that will move us forward towards achieving our business goals. And the admin stuff will follow. And so, you know, we can block off time in that way. So that list of tasks, what's business related, what's admin related, and organise it in a very simplistic way like that. And then the other thing is, you know, if we know as we go through that week, there's always going to be things coming in that we hadn't anticipated. Good stuff and not so good stuff that we're going to have to handle. If we don't have white space in our calendars, then we're not going to have the capacity to handle some of that. So, you know I've been on time management stuff where it's like blocking out every single minute of the day. And then what happens when something kicks off? What do you do? Whereas if you've got some white space, then, you know, you don't get into that dialogue and that debate of, well, what do I move? You know, I've got white space here, I can slot that in and I'll deal with it there. So just kind of like a thought there. So calendars. And this is just an example of Denise's calendar.
That's from last year, actually.
Was that from last year?
Yeah. See, appointments, very important.
They're the purple
Nails
ones.
should be on there somewhere, I'm sure. Personal time, shopping.
And you can see there's white space. Not on every day, but there's white space. And Wednesday is a good day for us to have kind of like white space. Okay, so just a little example there for you. So thinking about, you know, that major task list again, it's okay to sort of prioritise BD generating activities, and yet we could have a number of those. Okay, so one way to think about prioritization is to think about it in the context of, if I look at these list of, activities, then which of them are going to have a high impact on my business? Which are easy to do, which are high impact, but they're harder. Okay? Now, which are the things that, let's be honest, that lovely habit brain of ours likes to do easy stuff. But of that easy stuff, what is actually having an impact on our business and what is not going to have an awful lot of impact? And so what we can do is, if you had this grid and you're really honest with yourself, you can look at that list of BD generating activities and think, right, okay, let's think about, for me right now, video marketing we know it's high impact, but right now for me, because I haven't been doing much of it, it's going to take more time. It's a bit harder because I need to get I need to get used to being in front of the camera, get my scripts ready, and get used to sort of using my phone to upload everything and stuff. So that, for me, that might take a bit more time. For somebody else, that could be high impact and easy. Okay, it could be the flip for something else. So take your BD list and run it through this grid. So then you can really concentrate on things that are high impact for your business, and you've got a blend of easy and then something that's a bit harder, because you can break that down into smaller tasks that you can then work on over time. And you can then minimize, certainly have nothing that's easy to do and low impact. Okay, you don't want to have an awful lot there, really. So that's just one way of another way of helping you prioritize. So key thing is, though, when you've scheduled everything, it is to be mindful that you still might run out of time. If you were to start, whenever you start playing with new ways of working, it's not going to work perfectly for you straight away, and that's fine, because you're testing new things and you're finding out new ways that you can be more effective. So don't beat yourself up if you don't get everything done in the way that you want in the time that you've allowed yourself. But notice some of the following, okay? Because there will often be reasons why you're not getting through things necessarily in the way that you want. So, I love these. 9 time wasters that can trip you up. And I think I even thought of another one when I was sort of going through this earlier as well. So, no judgments here, anybody, right? Just recognize them. Key thing is, our brains don't work particularly well when we're tired. Okay, so there might have been a few people early this morning who, were thinking, should I really have had that last glass of wine last night? Because it kept me awake a little bit longer than normal. And I really shouldn't have had that conversation with myself about the GPs either in the middle of the night. But, you know how much sleep you need. Some of us need more than others, but your brain needs to rest, okay? So if you're tired, you're just going to make more mistakes, okay? So get enough sleep. Interesting thing here, a number of years ago now, there was lots of stuff going around online about productivity, and it was like every 90 minutes, you've got to have a good 15-minute break. And it was about working in 90-minute cycles. Well, interestingly, more recent research is sort of saying, actually, let's look at working a slightly shorter amount of time and have a 15-minute break every hour. So it's like real bursts of activity. And I used to feel really guilty that I was distracting myself and avoiding doing hard tasks. If I went and made a drink and realise while I'm boiling the kettle, actually I could empty the washing machine or the dishwasher at the same time. And of course, making that drink for just a couple of minutes turns into 10 minutes by the time I've hung the washing up and everything, you know. But anyway, when I saw this, I thought, oh, thank God, I can cut myself some slack, right? Because if I'm focused for 45 minutes and I need a drink, or I want to go and have a little walk outside or whatever, or hang the washing out, I can do it and not feel guilty that I'm using it as a distraction technique, yeah? So, lack of breaks, be mindful, it's not overly healthy to kind of be sat at your desk, not stretching and you know, just going at it for a good three-hour block. Give yourself some breaks, it's all right. Your brain will be better for it, to be honest. Overscheduling. Who is guilty of thinking that they can do far more in a day? Yeah? Oh, you know, we used to think we were clever when we were multitasking, weren't we? But now we've realised that actually that's not quite so smart. So, jam-packed schedules are not overly effective. As I say, leave white space. And if we're jam-packing our schedules like that, we really need to kind of like step back and question, are we prioritising as effectively as we could? Okay? And the other thing is, be mindful that you are not packing your schedule and filling your white space by saying yes to people that you should really be saying no to, because that's super easy to do. Okay? Notifications. Who has them switched on still? Yes, on your computer, on your phone.
No, not WhatsApp.
Not WhatsApp. Not what. That means that there's something else that you do have them switched on then.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, we'll probably have our favourite notifications. I know Denise joined a Facebook group recently, and it was like an international group of business women, and oh God, it was pinging away like I don't know what, wasn't it? So that's got switched off. So here's the fact though. Did you know that it takes your brain 23 minutes to get back on task after an interruption? 23 minutes. Now, if we can effectively work in 45-minute blocks and somebody's interrupted you, even if it's your loved one to ask you if you want a cup of tea, yeah, and it takes 23 minutes to get back on track, and that happens a couple of times in a day, that's a lot of less productive time, isn't it? Yeah? So get those notifications off and shut down any distractions of windows. And you know, we all have our little favourite things to distract us when we know we need to do something that's a bit outside our comfort zone and we need to really think about. And so if you're going to do that then, and shut email down or shut, you know, LinkedIn down, then we need to plan time when we are going to check in with those things. So that becomes part of, you know, I guess how we work. Now this is an interesting one. Be aware that when you've only got short amounts of time, that you don't talk yourself out of doing something just because you've only got that short block of time. So I know that there was kind of like a time when I would say to myself, well, I'm not going to make those couple of calls now, because if I do and I get involved in a conversation, I don't want to make myself late for this or put myself under pressure or get a bit stressed because I need to shut somebody off or cut them off from the conversation because I need to jump on another call or something. So I didn't do some of those calls. And then I kind of like thought, then I realised that some of those calls weren't happening. So then what I thought was, right, okay, I need a different strategy around this. And for me, it wasn't the 15 minutes one, it was when I had 30 minutes. I noticed it then, and I'd avoid doing certain kind of follow-up calls. So what I did was I thought, right, 30 minutes, how many people can I put a quick call into, and then probably, highly likely for half of them, leave a voicemail, and then send a WhatsApp. And if I do get them, what I'll do is, my outcome for that conversation is to book a call. with the right amount of time that I need. And when I kind of like made that shift, I thought, oh my God, why didn't I think about it before? Because I would have really short, focused conversations, get some calendar slots booked in, and I was so much more productive, and my follow-up was easier. And I was right. Half the dials resulted in a voice message, and then it was a quick text. But I got a response back, and so it moved things along. So it's being mindful that we don't fall into that trap of not doing some of those things that we could be doing. Let's just kind of, let's leverage those little short pockets of time. Manage your time versus energy. Now, who recognises that there are certain things that you are fab at the beginning of the day, awful at the end of the day? What kind of things for you, Natalie? And you're fab at them when?
At the beginning of the day, which is now when I go late swimming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. So you come back, you're all kind of like buzzed up, and you're good for marketing. Yeah. So it's just recognising, different times of day when you're in your creative mode. If you are going to review some of your job ads, when's your creative time? Plan it in then. When are the times of day when your energy is dipping? Okay, because there is a time when my energy dips and then it'll pick up again. And probably when it dips is when it's good to do some of those monotonous kind of like, admin-y, tasky things that you need to do. So, you know yourself. Track when you are at your most effective and schedule the relevant tasks in those time slots rather than just kind of like, cracking on and wondering why you're struggling with something. Well, you're struggling probably because you're not at your most resourceful. And asking for tons of opinions. So come on, who's guilty? Who's guilty if you're unsure of asking lots of other people's opinions? So we've got a few people there. Yeah, often it's when we're unsure. Yeah, and so I know something I'm guilty of is disturbing Denise. And if I'm unsure about something, and I'm kind of like thinking, well, I could do this, I could do that. How would I word this? Often it's kind of like, it might be around how to word an email or something. And so I get up and I go and walk to her office. I don't pick up the phone. I walk to her office because that kind of like just gets me out of, that kind of like sort of particular state, I suppose. And it doesn't matter what she's doing. I just open the door and I go, Bleh! What do you think about this? I'm thinking about doing this, or I'm thinking about saying this. What do you think? I know it kind of like, it's a bit annoying. So I'm working on that.
Thanks, I just lost 23 minutes.
But I know. So, rather than kind of like disturbing all those people, how about, just check in with yourself. And if you're 80% sure that, right, okay, this kind of like, I feel this is what I want to do, but I want to check. Rather than do the check-in, if you can say, you feel 80%, this is the thing, this is the right thing to say, this is the right thing to do, whatever. Just go and do it. Yeah, because we'll learn from it, okay? And stop beating yourself up if it doesn't work. We just do what Jed was talking about earlier. We go to the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and it all keeps moving us forward. Because over time we will learn to make faster, better decisions, provided we learn from those mistakes, I hasten to add there. So, neglecting self-care, second to last one. I've talked about putting yourself first. So, we all have different ways of taking care of ourselves. So, I'm not going to say an awful lot about that. But if you don't put yourself first and make yourself matter, there will ultimately be consequences. And it's not bullshit, and it's not selfish to put yourself first either. It's important because nobody else is going to take care of you as well as you can. Now, this is kind of like one, because this has come up in a couple of conversations about perfectionism. Who is the sufferer of this disease? I have been at times, yeah. So stop overthinking, guys, okay? The reality is that we can approach this in a number of ways, and there might be times, and there will be times, when actually you want to bring your absolute A game to something that you are doing. So, you know, for us, let's say, you know, I want to be able to bring, you know, my A game to these couple of days, to the calls we have, to the trainings we have, you know, and so I will do whatever it takes, and we will do whatever it takes to bring our A game to this. But I don't need to do that if I'm doing some invoices. And if an invoice goes out and there's a typo in it, I'm not going to beat myself up anymore. Okay? It's okay. I'm a human being. You're a lovely bunch of people. And if there's a slight typo, I don't think you're going to feel any, you're not going to think any worse of me, are you really? Yeah? So they're two extremes. But, you know, it's kind of like thinking about when do you need to bring your A game, and when, you know, thinking back to those old school reports, when is B- work good enough? Think about your videos, okay? So you're going to shoot some videos, and some of you are going to get that critical perfectionist head on of, ooh, I fluffed that word there, or ooh, I don't quite look right. So I'll re-record it. Or I didn't mean to say it that way. Good is good enough. Is good enough. There were times when I would re-record something over and over again because I would fluff something, you know, or I might stumble over a word because I'm talking too fast or whatever. But I don't do that anymore. I think, you know, we're a lot more forgiving. So, you know, sometimes take one is good enough. And if the wind is blowing when I'm recording down by the river, my vanity has now got to a point where I don't need to re-record because my hair's kind of like blown away. You know, I feel like I'm maturing in my older years. Yeah. So not everything has got to be done to that perfectionist standards. And the other thing is, what's perfection anyway? I don't know what perfectionism is. Yeah. But I know it can cause a lot of problems when you're overthinking. So, a few other things on time studies. Time studies show that we're all time wasters in some shape or form. Time studies show where we need help, and where we need to learn to delegate and get better at delegating, and where we should start saying no more. And I'm sure there's probably a lot we recognise ourselves in all of those first three things. You know, and I guess, you know, depending on the size of your business, that we all get to a point where we realise that actually we need to outsource, you know, hire some help, because actually it's better for us to pay for that help than for us to use our time to do some of those tasks that we need to kind of, you know, get off our plate. And sometimes I think, you know, on that bottom one, we hold on to stuff for a lot longer than actually it makes financial sense to. And a lot of us might justify that using, but I like to be in control. But our liking and our need to be in control can sometimes be harming our productivity and fundamentally our business. So you can't get more time. We can't get more than those 24 hours. We can spend more of those 24 hours working, but that's going to have consequences as well. but we can get a lot more deliberate about how we use and spend the time that we've got. And I think that might be, helpful planning tracking tools. Now, some of the new members may or may not be aware, but in the blueprint, there are some tracking tools to help you evaluate your productivity. There's something called the accountability form, and there is also like an activity inventory. So, the idea here is that you can track what you're doing, every sort of 15 minutes of the day, and that allows you to see, where are you investing your time? What's business generating? What's client delivery? What's admin? And that allows you then to make choices about how you invest in your time. What do you delegate? What do you outsource? So some really kind of sort of simple tools that you can use. The key thing here is, my key takeaway is do what works for you. Don't think you have to use somebody else's planning system. I guess what we've been doing is just, looking at lots of different things and looking at what works for us, recognizing where we're making, mistakes and losing out, and just kind of like finding our way of making different systems work for us. So there's some of the kind of like the systems that we use. One thing that I would sort of say is, use the marketing plan workbook. There's, some kind of like great resources in there. We're going to look at those in a second. And you've obviously got the marketing planning spreadsheet as well to just kind of help you plan and track that. Monday is a piece of project planning software, and there are other options there of that as well. So there's no one way. It's kind of like, just do what works for you, but just kind of like keep monitoring yourself and tracking yourself. And there's no harm in every quarter doing an activity inventory to keep yourself on track and keep looking at what else can you offload, so that you are spending your time on those really high important, high impact things in your business. So, any kind of like thoughts, comments, questions there? Any other tools that people have used as you've been on your own productivity journeys? Because I know there's lots of people that are very interested in this topic.
We use Trello. So
You use Trello?
Yeah, so we've actually got a brain dump section.
Yeah.
And then the high impact goals for the week that will actually work closer to the money.
Yeah.
And I do that for Mock and Alexis, and then every week we go through what they're going to do. And
Yeah.
pull stuff from brain dump into that, and then I can check it, see what they've done.
What they're doing as well. Yeah. And everybody's got insight into that as well. Yeah.
That works
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah. Yeah, like it. It's kind of another version of Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys at Castle use anything?
They have Teams, but I've used Monday before. Which
For?
I'm going to be bringing in.
Yeah. 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 Cool. Okay. So now then, we're going to do we're going to sort of move into some marketing planning. So, think about what you've been doing, think about what you want to be achieving next year. We've got Denise at the back, we've got the marketing planning workbooks, haven't we? So what I think we'll do first, though, is let's just have a quick break. Yeah. So we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll start the planning workshop. Okay?
Thank you.